Hello everybody, it is spring 2023 and in this video I'm going to explain why Calgary is one of the top investment property markets in the country and why right now is the perfect time to jump in and pick up some real estate here. So to understand why Calgary is so well positioned, we need to take a look at how this city fits in the context of the overall Canadian real estate landscape. And so to do that, I use the Canadian Real Estate Association's price comparison tool as a high level sort of barometer with respect to how pricing shakes up from one market to another. So that's what I've done here. And I want to compare how Calgary has fared in the last year compared to some of the other markets that have had a little bit of a softening, so to speak, for a couple of reasons I'll explain here in a minute. But looking at Vancouver right now, from this time last year, it's dropped in price a little bit less than 10%, 9.5%. The GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, worse than that at less than 16% right now, coming down by $200,000 almost here. From where it was last year. And then overall in the whole country, which is kind of cool, the Canadian Real Estate Association will provide an average price for the entire country, despite how big we are. And you can see in March of 2022 is almost $800,000, and now it's just under 700,000, so a 14% drop. But that's closely tied to the GTA because that's where most of the people in the country live. But still a big change there. But moving a little bit closer to home, if you can look at Edmonton, you can see the affordability here for Edmonton. The average price is under $400,000 right now, which is crazy good. But the year-over-year change for Edmonton still a little bit down from last year at minus almost 8%, 7.7. So how does Calgary fare compared to all of this? Well, Calgary's done a little bit better. We've actually grown just a tiny little bit in pricing, basically the exact same place that we were in this time last year, which is good news. So you can see why Calgary is highly recommended right now, because while other markets around the country and even in our own province are softening a little bit, Calgary is holding strong and preserving the equity that investors here have gained when they purchased property in years prior. They haven't given anything up, unlike some of these other markets. So why are these other markets declining so much? Well, prices were starting to get a little bit out of control, and so the Bank of Canada made these decisions to increase the key lending rate 8 times over the previous 12 months here. And so that's been essentially an unprecedented move. We haven't seen anything like that in the Canadian lending economy or in the mortgage market, for well over 2 decades, at least since I've been in business. But the good news with this is that now this is kind of done, all right? So the Bank of Canada is saying, we're holding our key interest rate here. We're not going to change that a lot. But these other markets are kind of reeling from that a little bit because they're so expensive. And because they're so expensive, debt is so expensive in order to qualify to buy property. And that's just resulted in prices coming down a little bit. So let's talk, though, about how Canada is growing, because demand for real estate in any market is going to be closely related to how many people are shopping for it and how many people want to live in that particular area. And this is a national issue that has affected the entire country and will also have an impact on Calgary that we'll look at here. So last year we had record high population growth in Canada. We grew by over 1 million people for the first time in our history. Have we had a year-to-year population growth increase of over 1 million people? So in 2022 we grew by by 1,050,000. And you can see here where these people are coming to. So this is a Statistics Canada graph. It's kind of like one of these heat maps that shows you where people are moving to. And you can see here the GTA, all of the orange is good. Purple, even though you would think it's denser, it means less dense in this one. White, of course, is sparsely populated. But yeah, the GTA here is where a lot of people are moving to in Canada when they first come here. But Western Canada is also doing pretty good. So you can see here Calgary and Edmonton and the central Alberta area are growing quite considerably as well, but not as much as you might expect in Vancouver, Victoria, and BC. But interesting to see the makeup of all of this here. And this is something that the Calgary Real Estate Board keyed in on when the statistics were released at the beginning of the year. And you can see here, people are moving to Alberta from all over the country. We've had really strong positive net migration. But the Calgary Real Estate Board gets their statistics from Statistics Canada, and I actually found this graph to be a little bit more helpful with respect to seeing just how much Alberta stands out right now for this. So if you look at this graph here, the orange line shows people moving away from that province. The green line shows people moving in. And then the dark blue line is the net of those two things. So it will show the total population gain as a result or loss according to migration. You can see here Alberta is really well positioned. We've not only had the highest overall migration into our province of any of the provinces in Canada last year, but we have the highest net migration as well. And so that's a really good sign, not just for Calgary, but for all of the markets in Alberta, because people are moving away from some of these really expensive markets. You can see here BC and Ontario, even though BC's got good net migration, Ontario's got so many people that have moved away from it, partially because of affordability concerns. And so why is this happening? Why are people coming to Alberta, and what does that mean for the Calgary real estate market? Well, this was also released from the Calgary Real Estate Board and shows employment growth. So it's not just affordability that's leading to people moving to Alberta, but it's also because our economy is doing really well. We're creating jobs, and there's an opportunity here for people to build a new life for themselves. And you can see here our Alberta employment growth figures exceed that of the overall country. Okay, and then Calgary in particular is the highest in all of Alberta for this, and over twice the national average for employment growth. So the interest in moving to Alberta, and in particular Calgary, is legit. It's happening because of job creation and affordability, and that's what we call in the industry economic fundamentals. It's not a speculative reason for people moving here. They're moving here because the economics make sense for them to do so. In addition to interprovincial migration, we talked about the whole country growing by over 1 million people. Well, a big factor of that is ex-provincial international net migration. So this is people moving to Alberta from outside of Canada. And you can see here 70,000 people. That's more than have moved here from everywhere internal to the country. So a lot of people, a lot of first-time Canadians are choosing to make Alberta their home, which is a really good thing. But this is creating a housing supply crunch, right? So we've grown by 1 million people, but if you look, according to Statistics Canada, the amount of new homes built over the same time period is a fifth of that. Just 219,000 homes have been built when 1 million people have moved here. And according to Statistics Canada, I hope you guys can see this. Maybe I'll try and just move this a little bit to make it a bit easier so you can. There we go. So what we're looking at here is the average household size in Canada, all right? This is on the table here from Statistics Canada that shows that in the whole country, every house has an average of 2.4 people in it. But if you look at what that means, according to this graph or the data that's coming in, we got 1 million people that are moving here, okay, and we've completed 219,000 units. And so if you look at that, we would need the household density to double, to be 4.7 or almost 4.8 people in order to accommodate all of these new Canadians. And so it just shows you that that's unrealistic to happen, and that we really do have a lack of housing supply, not only in Alberta and in Calgary, but all over the whole country. And that's creating this affordability growth and this concern. And so when we come back here, you can see we've got all these price changes, and Calgary is doing well for that. And people are moving out of these areas into Alberta, which is going to put more and more pressure on our local market here. So what is Calgary doing about this housing supply issue? Well, what's pretty cool about it is that the city of Calgary is very progressive with respect to densification. There is change afoot inside our municipal government to make it easier for developers to add more supply and create more income property here. And so this is a good reason for real estate investors to be looking at our market now, because you can get in at the front end of this if you're working with a great real estate agent that knows what to look for. Okay, so coming back here to interest rates for a minute, because this is going to give you an idea of why these prices that are coming down here, I don't really believe this is going to last in Canada. And I think Calgary is going to be way out front here in terms of growth into the future with this. So we've got all these interest rates that have come up. So if you're increasing interest rates and you have landlords that have mortgages, it's likely going to mean that the landlord's costs to hold their income properties are going to go up, which means they're going to need to generate more revenue by way of rents to cover off the costs of holding on to their properties. And in addition to that, if you increase interest rates, you're going to make it harder for purchasers to buy real estate, right? Because the first-time buyers, so the group that are currently tenants that you would see exit the rental market and enter the home ownership market, well, it's way harder for those for that demographic to do that now. So it may mean that they need to stay as tenants for longer than they wanted to. So you've got landlords that need to increase rents in order to meet the increased expenses by way of increased interest rates. And then you've got this pool of tenants unable to exit the rental market that are staying there because it's harder to qualify. Well, all that's going to mean for rents is that rents are going to increase. And this is a table here that kind of shows that. It's a little complicated, but if you look here, the Alberta rents are up by 13%. Canada's overall rents are up by 10.9%, which makes complete sense to me that that would go up, right? So this is going to mean more income available for economics as it relates to income property investment. Now, here's another one over here that I'm going to move over a little bit so you guys can see this. This is the average rate of inflation that's happening inside Canada right now, at least the end of last year. It's the highest overall change we've had from one year to the next. So 2021 to the end of 2022 had the highest overall change that we've seen at 6.8%. Okay, so quite a bit of an increase in overall inflation. And what this then means is, hold on here, I've got to find my slide again. Okay, so here we are. The rents are increasing by more than the rate of inflation. So if you're investing in real estate in Alberta, you're protected from this increased cost associated with overall inflation because you can raise your rents up by more than what it's going to cost you to carry your property as a result of these inflationary effects. Okay, so another great reason to look at that. And of course, Alberta having a great response here ahead of the national average right now, but it's high everywhere. Rents have come up quite a bit everywhere. And that's in response to these two effects we talked about: landlord costs increasing and a pool of tenants that would like to buy but can't because it's so much harder to do so. And as a result of that, you're going to start to hear a little bit more airplay now in Alberta with respect to regulating our rental market. Now, I've been on the news for this in the past. It's not a good idea for the long-term health of any real estate market. And in fact, I think other provinces across the country should be emulating Alberta's rules because we have a really fair landlord tenancy framework here in terms of how we're regulated, and the legislation that we have is very even-handed with this. But it is a better place to be a landlord in Alberta, in particular in Calgary, because if tenants aren't paying rent and living up to their end of the bargain, landlords in Alberta have a little bit more leverage with respect to how they can manage that than you would have in other provinces that have taken a different approach to managing rental costs. So why would you invest in Calgary right now? Because our market is still stable while other markets are decreasing. We have the highest provincial migration and net migration and very healthy international migration here. Calgary has the highest employment growth rate in the province and double the national average. Okay, so the demand for our real estate is legitimate. It's not just because we're affordable, but it's because we're creating employment opportunities here for people to want to move to our cities, not just from inside Canada, but from outside, or sorry, not just from inside Canada and other provinces, but from outside Canada as well. And rents are increasing at almost double the rate of inflation. So you're hearing these costs or these talks about inflation. Well, you don't have to worry about that if you're an income property investor here, because the rents that you can charge are pacing ahead of the growth of inflation. And we have one of the fairest residential tenancies act, this should say, in the country. But Alberta is a great example for how you can have an equitable arrangement between landlords and tenants, and should be figured out. Now, in terms of what you want to buy here, what you could buy, well, a Redline real estate agent would be a great option for you to reach out to if you'd like a little bit more information about that. We have a great connection to Calgary real estate, and we know what to look for. We've been doing this for nearly 2 decades now. And yeah, so that's why Calgary, and that's why now. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and we will see you next video.